Alrighty YouTube, it's your boy Zxous and we're back with another Goddess of Victory Nikke video, and the time has finally come where we update the top 10 Nikkes of Goddess of Victory Nikke. Before we get into the video, make sure you guys subscribe and like, and do please note that this tier list is not my opinion. This was something we did as a collective on my live stream. If you guys do want to watch the full making of the tier list, the link to that video will be in the comments and the description. So go ahead if you need further experience or if you need further clearance on why these characters are placed and stuff like that. Now let's get into the video. At number 10, we have Privity. Privity is one of the best characters in the game when it comes to supporting, and the best thing about this unit is that she's free. Yes, after 2 weeks of playing Nikke, you actually are able to get it for free if you do complete the day-by-day missions. So if you are new, make sure you guys are doing those missions. Privity is a supporter who increases all allies' attack, increases their reload speed, and decreases their max ammo capacity, which is very good for some characters who actually need to hit the last bullet to get an effect, right? You can kind of see how well she's supporting the team there. And then of course the reload speed and the attack is also one of the best things a character can have when it comes to supporting for the team, because reload speed is what most characters, almost 80, if not more than 80% of the characters need reload speed. And then of course everybody in the game needs that attack buff. So the fact that Privity is able to do that all on just one skill is quite insane, because her one skill is better than most characters' entire kit. Now, Privity's second skill is a skill that's not really talked about when it comes to this character, but it's still very useful. Now, when the last bullet hits a target, she does deal a very low percentage of final attack as additional damage, but if that enemy is stunned, she will deal a big amount of final attack as additional damage. Right, so if you do have the enemy stunned and she does hit the last bullet, which she is able to do because again, she does lower the max ammo capacity of herself and everybody else on the team, you will get a very big damage output from her second skill. Now her burst skill is just a regular burst skill, but it does have a very nice side effect that is useful in most content in the game. Now it just deals AoE damage of final attack as damage, and then also it does stun all enemies for 3 seconds. So it's very useful in PvP and PvE, right? Privity is definitely one of the best characters in the game, no questions. And the fact that she's free makes it even better. At number 9, we have Senti. Senti is one of the best burst 2 units in the game and definitely a top 3 defender in the game. Now, we actually have to talk about her skill 2 first before we can talk about her skill 1, because you will not understand her skill 1 if you don't know how her skill 2 works. But before we talk about all that, I actually want to explain how shields work in Nikke so that you guys have more of an understanding of what's going on here and why this character is actually so broken. So, how shields work in Nikke is actually different than how they work in almost every other gacha game. Let me explain. If I have a total of 100 max HP and a shield of 20 damage cap, but an enemy dealt 30 damage to me, my shield would break and the remaining 10 damage would overlap onto my HP, making my HP 90 out of 100 because the shield covered 20 out of 30 damage. In Nikke's case, if that was to happen, rather than the remaining damage overlapping onto my max HP, it would actually just nullify the remaining damage and break the shield. Basically, the shield in Nikke just becomes a second HP bar for the character. And with all that being said, it basically makes Senti a monster because she has somewhat of a spammable shield. Her second skill creates a shield equivalent to a certain percentage of her max HP and protects all allies from damage, and this lasts for 5 seconds on a 9-second cooldown, which means if you don't get hit within the 5 seconds, you're only going to be on and off of this shield for 4 seconds. And the reason why this becomes even better is because her first skill actually lowers the cooldown of the second skill by a nice percentage as well when you hit a target with a full charge. Now, her burst skill, of course, lowers defense to 5 enemies with the lowest remaining HP. So in a situation where you have just mobs, it's not going to be all that useful. But when it's a one-on-one with bosses, it will be quite nice, right? Of course, because you are going to be lowering the boss's defense. Not to mention, Senti has fantastic burst generation, right? She's probably one of the best burst generation characters in the game. So Senti has a lot of things going for her. With all that being said, Senti constantly proves in PvE and PvP why she's the best when it comes to burst generation or just defending the team. She does her job quite well. And again, because of how shields work in this game, her basically being able to have a shield that goes off every 4, 3, or 2 seconds, depending on what skill level your skill 1 is at, makes her even better in my opinion. So I will say Senti is number 9. At number 8, we have Blanc. Blanc easily is one of the best units in the game, especially when she's paired up with her sister, and even when she's not paired up with her sister. When this character came out, it blew the community's minds because she plays like a Pilgrim character, especially again when you have her paired up with her sister. Blanc is a defender that gives all allies a shield, recovers their HP, increases one of the allies' max HP and gives that same ally indomitability, and also increases damage taken by a very big amount to all enemies. What makes this character very, very broken is when you have her paired up with her sister and she takes that 60-second burst skill to a 20-second cooldown burst skill. Okay, so Blanc's first skill actually creates a shield equivalent to a certain percentage of her final max HP, which protects all allies from damage and also lasts for 5 seconds after you land 120 normal attacks. So because she's an AR, you actually do have to go through 2 sets of her ammo unless you have max ammo capacity or some type of way to increase her ammo capacity so you can get the shield off. Of course, it is similar like Senti's, but I do think Senti's shield, or at least the way Senti's shield procs, is better than the way Blanc's shield procs. Her second skill activates after a full burst ends, and that heals all allies by a certain percentage of Blanc's final max HP for every 1 second for 5 seconds, which is very good because there's not many characters who actually do heal after a full burst, right? A lot of the healers actually heal within a full burst, or it's like Rapunzel's and Pepper's where they have to actually just hit the enemy and then they heal. But what makes this character shine the very most in the game is that her burst skill cooldown actually gets reduced by 40 seconds. Keep in mind, her first skill is a 60-second cooldown, but it gets reduced by 40 seconds when you do have an ally from the squad, being her sister Noir, on the team, which is very nice because she has one of the best burst skills in the game. Speaking of her burst skill, she actually heals all allies by a certain percentage of her max HP for every 1 second for 8 seconds while you're in a full burst. So she's actually healing while you're in a full burst and after a full burst, right? And it's very, very nice because she can actually heal you the entire game, essentially. Now, this part is what blows my mind away, where she actually increases the max HP and gives indomitability to one ally unit with the lowest HP. If you do not know what indomitability is, basically when you die, you stay alive for 10 seconds in her case. And that's very broken because her having a 20-second cooldown if you're paired up with Noir basically means every full burst rotation, an ally with the lowest HP, and if that's a taunt, it's even better, will always have indomitability, and that character just will not be able to die. Not to mention, it gave her even more, where all enemies have their damage taken increased by a big percentage for 10 seconds as well. So you can quite see how Blanc is Pilgrim level. In my honest opinion, I do think she's very, very good, but for me, what holds her back a lot is that you do kind of need to have her sister for you to be able to use her the correct way, but there's no question this character is still one of the best characters in the game. Her support, her utility, and what she's doing for the entire team constantly in all type of content is what makes this character a top 10 guaranteed. And I know a lot of people might not say Senti is better than this character, or a lot of people might not say Blanc is better than Senti, but honestly, I do feel like Blanc is doing more for your team than Senti, because yes, She does also have the same shield mechanic as Senti. Senti's just procs faster and more efficiently, including all the heals and the indomitability that she can basically give to one of the allies with the lowest HP every burst rotation, especially if you have her sister. I didn't mention in the beginning, but this ranking for Blanc does include if she's paired up with her sister and if she isn't paired up with her sister, because it would be unfair if I didn't include her, and it would also be unfair if I only included her.
Noir to Blancのショータイムです。
At number 7, we have Noir. Noir is the other half of Blanc, where her role is actually to help your team get the most amount of damage possible, where she actually increases all allies' attack, increases their ammo capacity, and also reloads their ammo capacity. Not to mention, she is an essential for one of the hardest bosses in the game, being Gravedigger, where she actually increases all allies' hit rate and damage to interruption part by a big amount. Noir's first skill actually increases all allies' attack by a nice percentage when her HP is above 70%. So essentially, your allies will be getting a nice attack buff from Noir when her HP is above 70%, but when it falls below 70%, you will lose it. But if you do heal past 70%, again, you will regain the attack buff. So it's very nice for Noir. Her second skill, when you actually enter a full burst, all allies will have their magazine reloaded by a nice percentage, meaning that instead of them reloading their guns, they will just re-get the bullets that they lost by, or a percentage of it at least, and then also will have their max ammo capacity increase by 5 rounds for 10 seconds from Noir. So she's very good in doing that. I think she's actually the only character who can do something like that, at least together at once. And her burst skill is an AoE that actually increases all allies with a shotgun's hit rate and damage to interruption part, which is very good for Gravedigger because the best team for Gravedigger is a shotgun comp. So because you have this buff for shotguns, it's quite nice. Not to mention, if she is paired up with Blanc, she actually gives all allies the same effect, just slightly lower percentages, but it does last for 30 seconds where the buff for only shotguns lasts for 10 seconds. So although I do think Blanc's kit in general is better than Noir's kit in general, it doesn't really change the fact that Blanc still needs Noir, and it's as clear as day that Noir does not need Blanc. I do think they're both on par in terms of what they're bringing to the team and for the content you're tackling, but it doesn't really change the fact I do think Noir is just better for your account, because obviously with Blanc you need to have Noir. With Noir you can have Blanc, but it's not really needed. At number 6, we have Alice. Alice is no question the hardest hitting character in the game that is not a pilgrim. The only downside to this character somewhat is that you do need to fully invest into her for her to get her max potential. So before we talk about Alice's skills, we're going to be talking about her normal attack because it is very important to her kit. She is the only sniper in the game who has a full charge damage of 350%, while every other sniper has it at 250%, making her the hardest hitting sniper with full charge damage, of course, because it's higher than every other sniper's. So for Alice's first skill, when you enter a full burst, 2 allies with the highest attack will actually have their charge speed and charge damage increase. Now this is good and bad. Bad if the 2 allies with the highest attack do not have any charge mechanics. It's a quite useless skill for them, but good for the characters who do have charge mechanics, which would be snipers and rocket launcher characters, and any characters who change their weapon and gains the charge mechanic. Her second skill is what really makes this character shine. When her HP is above 80%, she guaranteed has the pierce effect for every shot she makes. But when her HP falls below 80%, she actually just continuously recovers HP by a nice percentage of attack damage until she hits that 80% again, and then she regains the pierce effect. And finally, her burst skill actually increases her attack by a insane amount and her charge speed by an insane amount for 10 seconds. And what makes this character very good is if she has one of the highest attacks, she'll be getting her first skill, she'll be getting her second skill, and her burst skill all together. And if you actually invest into her where she has more charge speed, you're basically going to have a character that when you enter a full burst, she's going to be knocking out 2, 3, 4 million damage per shot, and that will be going at the speed of light, literally. Take a look. keep in mind, that's my Alice that's barely invested into. Take a look at an Alice that is fully invested. Quite insane, right? And Alice could always be knocking 1, 2, 3, 4, even 5 million. I've seen Alice is knocking out 5 million damage per shot. So literally, it's quite insane what the character is able to do. So honestly, we can all agree that Alice is no question one of the hardest hitting units in the game, and is the hardest hitting unit in the game that is not a pilgrim. But the only downside to her for most is that you have to invest into her. But when you do invest into her, she is clearly going to be better than most pilgrims in the game. At number 5, we have Rapunzel. Rapunzel's a healer who can constantly heal more than half of your team consistently, increase a couple allies' max HP and healing potency, and then also revive a fallen ally. Rapunzel's first skill heals 3 allies with the lowest HP when she attacks with a full charge, and she can do this very consistently. That's more than half of the team, not to mention if they are all at 100%, she's actually just going to heal from left to right. So obviously the first person, second person, and the third person in the middle, but it is a very efficient skill. It's actually the most efficient healing skill in the game. Her second skill will increase max HP and healing potency of 2 allies with the highest attack every 15 seconds, but it does last for 15 seconds. So after the first 15 seconds of a battle, you're always going to have your max HP and HP potency increase for 2 allies with the highest attack. And for the people who do not know what HP potency is, it's basically healing received, so increased healing. And then for Rapunzel's burst skill, she's actually going to recover a nice percentage of HP from her final max HP. And then she can actually also revive an ally who has died with the highest attack. But another thing that not many people really talk about, when her HP falls below 30%, all enemies actually get stunned for 1 second. It's not that crazy, but it is very useful. But that burst skill is on a 60-second cooldown, so you really have to pick and choose when to use it. Overall, there's no question Rapunzel is the best healer in the game. She's very consistent, she can revive, and she's actually supporting the team by increasing their max HP a bit more for those DPSs who might die instantly. Like Scarlett will be nice for that, right? And obviously when Scarlett does lose HP, Rapunzel is going to be the most efficient character to be paired up with her. So I do think Rapunzel is the best healer in the game, because on top of that, she can revive as well, right? The only other character who can revive is Anne, and Anne isn't as good, nearly as good as Rapunzel. At number 4, we have Dorothy. Dorothy is a character who can lower burst skill cooldown, increase damage dealt to boss parts, deal additional damage when needed, give herself the pierce effect, and also puts an effect on an enemy that accumulates damage dealt within the time frame and re-puts out that damage when the time frame has come to an end. Dorothy's skill 1 lowers the cooldown of burst skills for all allies when she lands the last bullet, which is quite nasty, right? For all allies, it's going to be very good to get your full burst rotations going. But when she's in her transform state, all allies actually gain damage dealt increase to boss parts that lasts for 5 seconds, right? So that's very nice as well. Her skill 2 just does AoE damage based off her attack and is on a 20-second cooldown. It's not really much. But for her burst skill, she actually does transform, and the cooldown of her skill 2 goes from 20 seconds to 2 seconds and lasts for 10 seconds. So basically you're going to be able to use her skill 2 5 times within her burst skill. And she gains the pierce effect for 10 seconds. But what makes this character shine so much and what makes her so unique in the game is that she actually procs a brand effect on an enemy and accumulates total damage dealt to the enemy during the duration, and then deals that accumulated damage to all enemies as distributed damage once the duration ends. And the maximum accumulated damage is up to a huge percentage, at level 10 being 8,900.83% of the caster's attack that lasts for 10 seconds. Now obviously this is just quite nasty, there's no question, right? Imagine putting an effect on a character where when they keep getting hit, they actually are just accumulating more damage and it gets redone to them. It's quite nasty. Overall, there's no question that Dorothy is one of the best pilgrims in the game, top 3 easily, and a top 5 unit in the game easily. She's very good in PvE and PvP because that brand effect, if it actually does go off and she ends up dying, the other allies on your team could still proc the brand effect and it could change your PvP situation. It's not really that efficient, but it's definitely there for you if you need it in PvP. When it comes to bosses, she just makes everything easier. When it comes to progression, she makes everything easier because again, she has the AoE damage and the brand effect that actually does split between all enemies if there are multiple enemies, or just goes to the one enemy if there's just one enemy, right? Increasing damage dealt. Very nasty character, very nasty character indeed. And number 3, we have Litter. Litter is a well-rounded support that can increase attack for all allies, increase their crit damage, increase their max ammo capacity, lower their cooldown burst skills, and also covers HP. So Litter's first skill is actually a very unique skill because it does multiple things depending on how much times you activate it. Obviously, depending on how much times you activate it, it lowers the burst skill cooldown by a nice amount and it does stack. But when you enter a burst skill the first time, she actually does give all allies max ammo capacity increase for 5 seconds. Second time would be crit damage by a certain percentage for 5 seconds. And then the third time would be an attack buff for a certain percentage for 5 seconds, right? So she's quite nasty there, right? She's just constantly giving buffs and lowering the burst skill cooldown so that you can get into a full burst more efficiently. Litter's second skill is very unique because she's the only character in the game who can actually do this effect in the way she does it, where she actually recovers the cover HP by a big percentage for 2 ally units with the lowest cover HP every 15 seconds. Obviously, there's a character named Coco who has the same type of effect, but hers is based on her max HP and it's a very low percentage. Litter's just completely recovers it based on the percentage of the shield. So if it's at 50%, she just recovers 50% of it. No other restrictions, that's it. And for her burst skill, it's on the 20-second cooldown, but essentially she just gives all allies a very big attack buff for 5 seconds, at level 10 being 66%. Quite nasty, especially if you do enter it the third time, you'll be getting that additional 14.42% from her skill 1. So there's no question that Litter is just one of the best units in the game. Best burst 1 in the game, honestly. There's just nobody who really competes with her. And number 2, we have Scarlett. Now, a lot of people are going to agree and disagree with this because Scarlett is no question the hardest hitting character in the game. But honestly, that's all she is. Scarlett increases her own attack, her crit rate, and her crit damage, and she just does insane numbers. But in order for all of this to happen, she has to lose HP. She's a character who basically gets stronger the weaker she gets. Scarlett's first skill actually increases her attack by a whopping insane amount. At level 10, that amount is 23.15%, and this stacks up to 5 times. You heard it correct. That means she increases her own attack by well over 100%, but this does last for 5 seconds. So you do have to build a team around her to keep this stack going, or it'll just be useless. But this only happens when she lands 10 normal attacks, and for every 10 normal attacks she does land, she does lose 4% of her HP. Her second skill does damage, but there's a 30% chance of this activating when she is attacked, but when her HP falls below 60%, she does give herself a permanent crit damage buff. And for her burst skill, she does an insane amount of AoE damage, but when her HP falls below 50%, she gives herself a pretty decent crit rate buff that lasts for 10 seconds. So overall, you have this character, you beat the game. I understand, again, a lot of people are not going to agree with her being number 2, and there's a lot of people who are going to agree with her being number 2. But in my honest opinion, she is the hardest hitting character in the game, but I don't personally feel like just because of that, you're guaranteed supposed to be number 1. And at number 1, we have Modernia. Now, a lot of people are going to agree and disagree with this because for the #1 spot, it does rotate between Modernia and Scarlett for a lot of players. Although I do think Scarlett hits harder than Modernia, there's no question in my mind that Modernia is a much more universal character than Scarlett. Modernia increases her attack, crit damage, and hit rate, but what makes this character broken is when she enters her burst skill that allows her to have unlimited bullets and recognizes all enemies as one within fire range. Modernia's first skill deals additional damage when she attacks with a normal attack, so basically her normal attack is just being buffed in terms of damage. But when she lands 200 of those normal attacks, she actually does increase her crit damage that does stack by a nice percentage and lasts for 10 seconds. But for every 200 she does land, she's actually lowering her own max ammo capacity by a percentage that stacks up to 5 times and also lasts for 10 seconds. For Modernia's second skill, when you enter a full burst, all allies will have their hit rate increase for 15 seconds. But for herself, when she's under that hit rate buff, she actually will give herself a nice attack buff that lasts for 10 seconds if she also lands 200 normal attacks while under the hit rate buff. But this is what makes Modernia very, very, very broken. Modernia's burst skill actually increases the full burst time by an additional 5 seconds, but when she enters her burst skill, she gains unlimited ammo for 15 seconds. Not only that, she does go into the destroy mode effect that extends her line of sight and auto aims to all enemies within fire range, and they're all recognized as one single enemy regardless of its interruption part. Not only that, she does deal additional damage for 15 seconds, so it's like the first effect in her first skill. So overall, although I do think Scarlett hits harder than Modernia, there's no question that for general content, Modernia is able to just do more for you and the team because she is increasing her attack, she's supporting them, she's basically has a somewhat of a portable AoE, right? When you use her burst skill, she's a very nasty character. Her utility is very, very unmatched in this game, and I do think, of course, Scarlett does hit harder, but for me personally, and for a lot of people in the community, damage doesn't always mean you're #1, right? There's no I in team. So we've made it to the end of the video, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. I did put time into editing and stuff like that. It was a very fun video to make, obviously, because like I said in the beginning of the video, we did do this on live. If you guys hear a dog in the back, I can't control it, but we did do this on live. And again, I do think this top 10, a lot of people will agree, a lot of people might not disagree, but I think I want to say maybe 90% of the people who watch this video can agree that the top 10 characters in this video are the top 10 of the game. Maybe not the exact placements that they were in this video, but you would definitely say the characters that were shown in this video are top 10. I know there's going to be some people who want Dala or Drake or Guilty to be in the top 10, even Haran, right? But like I said, if you want the full reason on why they didn't make the top 10, go ahead and watch the full video of us breaking down the top 10 characters in the comments and the description below. But without all that being said, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Like I said, it was very fun. Make sure you guys subscribe and like, and I'll see you guys in the next one. I'm out later. Peace.